It's 30 years this month since one of the biggest disasters in British business history. Gerald Ratner created the world's largest chain of jewellery stores, and in one speech, he destroyed it. Comparing his products to rubbish, he said a pair of earrings were cheaper than a prawn sandwich and wouldn't last as long. The speech bombed and his company nearly collapsed, though it wasn't the end of his business career. We can speak to Mr. Ratner now. Good afternoon to you, Gerald. I wonder if we can go back 30 years ago, pre this infamous now Albert Hall speech. What the world of Gerald Ratner was like at that time?
Well, we just announced profits of 125 million the day before. In fact, we were going for 200 million in that year. We had 2,500 shops. We'd come from sort of 7 years ago, a business that was losing money. So everything was going extremely well. And then I was invited to make the speech at the Albert Hall, made a couple of jokes, and here we are talking about it 30 years later.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that the business had been struggling a few years previously. It was seen as being inaccessible, as been stuffy. You shifted the focus to affordability. You snapped up rivals. You were seen as having the Midas touch. Where were you planning to go pre that speech?
Well, we'd just, we'd had 1,000 shops in America that were doing very well. We were one of the few British retailers to succeed in America. We were defying the recession as well, because in 1991, we were deep in the recession, but we were still doing extremely well because of the fact that we were offering very low prices, very affordable jewellery, which had never happened before in the jewellery business. Jewellery was always regarded as very expensive, a province of the rich. We changed all that. We broke the threshold barrier. That's the sadness of the stupidity of the speech, because all that ended, not only for me, but a lot of managers used to come up to me, at the age of 21 and say, I gave them a chance when nobody else would to run a shop. So, it was an absolute unmitigating disaster, consequences of that speech.
You must have gone over and over and over this countless times, but as you made the remark, were you aware of how controversial it was going to be, that it was going down badly?
Not at all. In fact, it went down very well. Everybody at the Albert Hall took it the way it was supposed to be meant, that it was just a couple of jokes to liven up the speech. The press said that I said it all about my jewellery, which I never mentioned my jewellery. I said it about one item, a sherry decanter, that we acquired when we bought H. Samuel. So no, it was only when you read the tabloids the next day that it did look terrible. But I mean, as I left the Albert Hall, I didn't think anything was untoward. And I don't blame the press, because the press, always do that. They're disingenuous, and good luck to them. That's what people want to read about. They want a story that's exaggerated somewhat. But it was my own fault. It was a dumb joke to make. I'd made it before, and people found it quite funny. But on this occasion, they didn't find it. Well, they found it funny in the hall at the Albert Hall, but once they read it in the press, or the press's version of it, they didn't find it funny at all, and people stopped coming into our shops, and not only Ratner's, but other businesses that owned, like H. Samuel, Ernest Jones, Watches of Switzerland. So it had a devastating effect. But
you say it was just meant as a light-hearted joke, but it was perhaps the timing of this that hit hard, wasn't it? We were in recession, people were struggling to pay bills. You were seen as holding your customers in contempt, and that it was crass. And the result was you lost everything.
Yeah, I did. I lost absolutely everything. The shares went down from £4.20 to 2p. I had to sell my house, take children out of school. Yeah, I did. I paid a very, very high price for it. But, if anyone who knows me, and all the managers who I still keep in touch with and stuff like that, know that the one person that doesn't have contempt for their customers is me. I adored my customers, and I gave them fantastic value for money. And that's what really hurts, the fact that people still to this day on Twitter say that. It was a joke. It was a joke that backfired big time. But this talk about contempt for customers, making fun of them, is way off the mark. And you're absolutely right. We were deep in recession in 1991. People couldn't pay their electricity bills and stuff like that. And they were looking for a fall guy for this, because the mood had changed dramatically, as I said, because when I made the joke, 2 or 3 years earlier, it was even actually printed in the Sun, that same joke. And the Sun's called it Gerald's Gems. He's well known for making jokes. They thought it extremely funny. But that was when we were in a boom. When we were in a recession, they viewed it in a different way.
What impact did it have on you to go from the dizzy heights to nothing, selling your house, losing everything? How did you cope with that sudden shift?
Well, I didn't cope very well. The press said that I was unemployable. Everyone was making jokes about me. And I sort of spent 7 years lying in bed watching Countdown. I didn't want to play anymore. I gave up. It was only when my wife threatened to kick me out that I went out. And the one thing that was keeping me sane was cycling, which I still do to this day, 25 miles a day. And the exercise has helped me through. They helped a lot of people through this pandemic. So I'm really a believer in exercise. And then I started up a health club with no money whatsoever, sold it 2.5 years later for £4 million. And it was the most wonderful feeling to be back in business and to actually be able to pay my bills again and not have huge bills that I couldn't pay and being in this terrible situation. So, I won't say that I'm glad I made the joke. I'm far from it. But I do appreciate things much more nowadays after losing everything. I think that's human nature.
Just quickly, you also mentor others. What's your one bit of advice to them, Gerald?
Well, yes, I do a lot of mentoring and I really enjoy it and I like to help them. And I think what I would say to them is that, if I can come back from the worst corporate disaster of all time, then if you have a setback, don't worry about it. You'll come back as well. Just keep trying. You will get knocked down. Nobody will sail through life without not having a setback. But in fact, if you do have a setback to a certain degree, you see people who haven't had setbacks and they lack a certain amount of sympathy and empathy. To be part of the human race, you've had to have suffered somewhat. So, don't worry about it if things go wrong. Business, you can bounce back. In life, you can bounce back.